So when we went down the river a little further, we found another spot that we were going to camp at. And we went to an island and set up camp, took everything off the pontoon, and we needed some gas and some small supplies. And so because we had so much gas cans on the John boat, there wasn't room for both of us. Dad stayed at the campsite, and I went over across to the bank. There was actually a dock there, and docked up and walked to a convenience store with several cans of gas to get gas. And when I got back, I drove back across with the pontoon or the John boat to where Dad was, and he was gathering up stuff and looked like he was in a hurry, and I didn't know what he was doing.
Well, while Barry was gone, the water started raising, and I could see that we was going to have to move the camp. And so when Barry got back, we started loading stuff back in the pontoon boat, and by the time we got everything loaded, we was wading in water. And so we left that island and found another place to camp for the night, and it wasn't too far away, but it was pretty rocky, and it wasn't really our choice, but it had to do.
So the next morning, we actually had put stakes in the water to see how much further the ground had rose, and I think it probably rose another 2 feet while we were sleeping, but we were high enough that it didn't affect us. We hadn't had supplies since we had stopped in the marina in Ohio, and so we were running low on food and vegetables and the vegetable oil and the cornmeal we needed to fry the fish. And so we started thinking about how we were going to, where we were going to stop, because there's very few cities that are on the Mississippi River. And somebody had been following our journey on Facebook and had reached out to Lori, knowing that we were going to come pretty close to his town, and said, hey, if they need anything, just have them look me up. Well, it just happened to be the very next day that we were looking for supplies that Brian had reached out to Lori, and then I contacted him and set up a stopping point, and that was in Drummond, Tennessee.
All right, my name is Brian Mack. I'm 42 years old, born and raised in Munford, Tennessee, and love fishing, boating, anything has to do with the river, I'm usually there. I saw their Facebook page that Lori had made, the Curtis and Barry's Mississippi River Adventure. And I liked the page and followed the page, and was very interested in what they were doing. And I reached out and asked if there's anything I can do, just let me know.
And we found a location that Brian had pointed us in that direction, a small island just across the river from Drummond. So we set up camp there, set up the everything, and then Brian actually came over in his boat and picked me up. And Dad finished setting up camp, and then we were fishing for a while, and then he took me to Walmart, and we picked up all the supplies that we needed, and then he brought us back and then took the boat back over to where our campsite was. And I think Dad had caught several fish, and we had the supplies to fry them up, and had a good night.
He caught me late, and I'd never been on the river after dark, and I was like, well, they need me, so let me get down here and see if I can help. And I took them the propeller and kept across the river, and it was very dark, couldn't see 2 feet in front of the spotlight, and met Barry. They were unloading their shanty. They had a fire going. Met Curtis, and Barry loaded up 25 gas cans in my boat, and said, I need to go to the gas station. I need to go to Walmart. I said, I got you, buddy, let's go. So we went to the gas station, and like I said, he filled up all 25 cans, spent about $400-something. And then we went to Walmart, and he picked up a bunch of supplies he needed for his trip, and took them on back down there and dropped them off and called it a night. It was too dark, couldn't see anything.
When Barry got back with the supplies, I was telling him that I hadn't told him before, but my feet, ankles, and legs had been swelling, and I told him didn't know whether I was going to be able to finish the trip or not. And so he looked at him, and he decided to call his mom, and she could meet us in Memphis, and I'd have to give up the rest of the trip. So that's what he did.
So Dad was telling me about his ankles bothering him, and I knew he'd kind of been quiet for a couple of days, and I was taking a look at it, and they didn't look good, and I'd never seen Dad unhealthy ever, but I was concerned, but figured that, you know, maybe just because of walking on rocks and all that he would be fine in a day or so. So we got all our supplies, we loaded back up. I filled up the pontoon with gas the next morning, said goodbye to Brian and his son, and we took off, and almost immediately pontoon was not running properly, and we were in pretty swift water. The next thing I know, the pontoon completely dies, won't start. I jump out of the water and swim towards the bank with a rope, because we're just floating free with a heavy current, and I finally get up on the bank and pull the pontoon close enough that we can get it stopped, and it would not start again.
When Barry was pulling on that pontoon trying to get over the bank from the current, he thought the rope was tied to support on the pontoon, but I had my hand on the rail on the pontoon. I had the rope in my other hand. And when he was tugging on that with the swift water, I thought he was going to pull me in too. But I knew I couldn't let go or I'd be gone. And so finally he got us over to the bank, but I didn't think I was going to hang on.
I had no idea he was holding that pontoon with his arms. I thought it was tied up. And I'm yelling at him he says, I can't hold this. I was, let go. He says, no, I'm not going to let go. So yeah, if he'd let go, I may have found him in New Orleans a week later. So I ended up basically swimming back to where we were on the camp and pulling the pontoon and getting a hold of Brian again, saying, you know, can you help us out, because we're stuck, we're stranded, we can't get the thing started.
And I was at my buddy Chad's house hanging out. We was going to have a little party over there tonight, a little get together. Barry calls again. I need your help again. I'm stuck right over here. He said, boat broke down. I said, can you come pull me back? So I talked to Chad, and Chad was like, yeah, let's take my boat, we'll go. Well, we went back out there and hooked up to him. And
he was working, and he had a buddy that knows a little bit about the mechanic side of boats, and they came over after work. It turned out to be later than we thought, almost dark, and they drug or towed our pontoon with Brian's boat over closer to the city, Drummond, and we spent the night there. And he had a buddy named Chad who was awesome. Came back that morning, the next morning. That may have been a weekend. It might have been a Saturday, and he started working on the motor.
We said, "I don't worry about that. We'll come back in the morning, daylight again, and we'll check it out." And Chad, we went back out there. He was very excited. He was ready to help. And looked at took the cover off the engine and noticed a little milky substance filling around the carburetor, water and the gas. So Chad, he did most of the work. He took the tank out there, the whole gas tank out of the shanty, dumped it, and filled it back up with new gas, and got them on their way finally.
I had an idea that it was never going to go get started again, but what they decided is that we'd had some bad gasoline in it, and one of them, I know, I stayed in the boat while they was working on it, and where it was dark, but they took the gas tank off of the pontoon and drained it, and then put it back and put some new fuel in it, and it started right up, and I don't think Barry had any problem with the rest of the way to New Orleans, but yeah, they was a big help.
Yeah, Chad had figured out they must have, when we turned over the John boat, we must have got water in a couple of the tanks without realizing it, and then when I poured it in that morning to get going, it was sucking water and gas, and that's when it died. And Chad was able to figure that out, and it did put it back together. I wouldn't have never even attempted it. So we had to stay another night, and then we left the next morning after he had fixed it. Well, our boat motor stopped, so we're getting a tow end and figure out what's going on, get somebody to work on it so we can get down the road or down the river. There's where we were. We went about 300 yards today. Motor stopped. We're going to try to figure it out here and get started again tomorrow. His legs and feet and stuff were even getting worse, and I was getting very concerned about him. And I said, you know, I don't want you in pain the entire trip, and I don't want, you know, this to come into something more. So we talked about, as much as he didn't want to leave, we talked about maybe Mom ought to come down and meet us in Memphis and then, you know, at least see what's going on. And I think Dad, you know, there was just so much that went on and so much work that I just think he wore himself out. And he needed to go home.
What I think the problem was is just being jarred around from the waves and the wakes and being tossed around on the pontoon boat for so long that it caused my swelling, and I'm pretty sure that was the reason, because when I was home on solid ground for probably less than a week, the swelling went down, and I never have had any problems since. So I think it's just jarring around and being wet. And
I think he just missed Mom and wanted to get home. I think that's what it was.
Well, I think I verified that when I mentioned her in my poem.
So we get close to Memphis, and looking at the map on where the marina is, and we can't see it anywhere. And Dad finally calls a boat over and asks, you know, do you know where the marina is? And it was hidden so much that even with binoculars you couldn't see where this marina was at.
We had already passed it at least a mile downstream.
Probably 2 or 3 different times, because we went back up and down that river trying to find the silly thing. And some guy goes, you can't see it from here. You have to go all the way over to the bank. What was pretty cool about Memphis, there was a pyramid, and it said Bass Pro Shop. Well, me and Dad loved Bass Pro Shop, and we're thinking this entire pyramid's got fishing equipment, so we were pretty excited about going shopping. And so we found the marina. They said we could stay there a couple days, and so that's where we docked for a few days, and then we went and got a hotel room because I was concerned about Dad. We got a hotel room. Had the best pizza I've ever eaten in my life. Of course, I hadn't eaten anything but fish the entire trip, so that pizza was really, really good. And man, that place was awesome. The biggest pro shop I've ever seen. In fact, the top of the pyramid I found out later, is a hotel. So we'd had some trouble with the John boat getting leaks, and we'd fixed it several times, and I was not in the mood, knowing Dad was leaving, to be working and fixing a John boat. Well, we are at the second biggest Bass Pro Shop in the United States, buying a new John boat. I have patched the John boat for the last time. So we are in Memphis. I've kind of failed to communicate the last couple of days because they had a motor stopped working, and I'll have it all, I'll put it all together on steel shots, but got that worked on and fixed, and we are pretty close to getting ready to go. There's the nice lady that sold us the boat, and we'll be back on the road shortly.
They finally made it to Memphis from here, and they bought a new John boat because theirs was leaking, obviously. And they called my buddy Chad, and they gave him the old John boat for helping. He was very ecstatic about that. He still has the John boat today.
So we bought a new John boat, new tracker John boat while we were there, and told them about what we were doing in our trip, and they actually delivered the new John boat to the marina the following day, and that night is when Mom and Beth came in. And the next morning we went back to the marina, all of us, and Beth and I worked on the boat, and Dad fixed the new tent and got it all set up for us. And then soon after that, they took off, and I was all on my own, and I wasn't very happy about it. But Dad needed to go home. I was worried about him, and we made the right decision for him to take off. Not too many 88-year-old men can go, almost 600 miles on the Mississippi River like we did. So not too many would even attempt it.
Well, I was thinking maybe Barry would hang it up there also, since I was going to, but he was determined. And he said he was going to go ahead. Well, yes, I was kind of disappointed I couldn't finish the trip, but I think I did pretty good. 6 weeks on the water, and then after I got home, I was kind of really concerned about Barry being by himself, but I kind of was able to keep in touch with him from his Facebook and kind of rooting him along the way. But yeah, I was disappointed, but I'm not ashamed of leaving him, because I think I did good for my age.
You did good for any age.
Well, looking back on the starting of the trip, I was going to find out where them sticks ended up, and I didn't get as far as the sticks, but I probably got a lot further than some of them. They probably got hung up on them drifts and things, and they couldn't break themselves loose, but we worked our way around them and through them and over them and under them, and so I think we did pretty good. Any of the sticks that passed by us was somebody else that threw them in, and maybe one day they can follow them down the Mississippi to the ocean. Yeah, I'm glad I attempted it, and I'm not sure I want to try it again. Maybe with a different outfit and a smaller a boat, or maybe a canoe or a pontoon boat that we could work our way around the drifts and things without getting out and prying our way through. So I know at my age I'll never be able to take a canoe and a pontoon down there, but if I was younger, I think that was what I'd choose next time, to go something smaller and maneuverable. I would have went back down to Memphis and crawled on that thing again and went all the way. Yes, I would have went all the way.